Hello, crypto world! Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. So in this video, I'm going to talk about XRP. I'm going to talk about what I believe it is doing right now, and what I believe is going to take place soon on the XRP chart. So let's dive in. Okay, so this is the macro structure. I'll get into that in a little bit. But what I want to do is I want to follow up from my previous video on this setup that led to the great fakeout. So it starts over here in fractal 2 with wave C. So wave C comes to a peak, it then declines, and it makes the first hit on this would-be trend line in fractal 3. So this kicks off fractal 3. Price moves back up, creating this first bounce in fractal 3. It then comes back, touches it again, goes back up, creates another bounce, which is the second bounce in fractal 3. It touches it here. So here we are zoomed in. You can see that it touches it on the way down, and then as it forms its bottom, it goes back and forth through this trend line multiple times before eventually moving back up and forming this part of the structure. So here we are zoomed back out. After it forms a bottom, it moves up into what I am calling the great fakeout. So this move up and this move back down is what I call the great fakeout. Now, this same setup is taking place once again over here. So starting in fractal 2 at the end of wave C, price comes down, hits this would-be trend line, it bounces up, creating the first wave in fractal 3. It then comes back at the end of that wave to that trend line, touches it, it bounces up, creating the second wave. If we zoom in here, we can see that it touches it on its decline, on its way down, just like it did in the previous one, and then it goes back and forth through this trend line multiple times as it forms a bottom. So in my previous video, I was talking about I was wanting to see this move up right here. Well, folks, we have started that move up. What I want to do is I want to examine this move up closer and give you an idea of what I believe is taking place on this chart. So this is part of the great fakeout fractal, part of the fractal 3 that took place over here. So I copy and pasted this structure right here over here. So this fractal moves up just like we see on today's chart. Now the timing is a little different on this one. If we scoot this over here, we can see that this aligns with this. This wave up over here is this right here. It then declines, and this move up in the fractal is this move up right here. Now this time it didn't go as deep as the fractal suggested, and the reason why stuff like that can happen is every time a fractal repeats, the timing, height, and depth are going to be original to the new iteration of that structure or that fractal. So the idea repeats, but the timing, height, and depth, they're going to be original every single time the structure repeats. So it then moves up. You see the move up with the fractal, and in the chart, we see the move up right here. It then declines, and we see it come to a peak right here. It then drops quite drastically, moves up, and I believe that this is this right here. So it is this right here where it really did deviate. It didn't really deviate, just the timing, height, and depth was very different this time around. So if we were to copy this part of the decline right here and copy and paste it over here, it would look something like this. So let's zoom in here and get a better look. So this is on an hour candle. So as you can see, this decline really does match. This part moved up quite a bit further, same over here. And these kind of things can happen due to the timing, height, and depth being unique. When a fractal goes flat a lot of times or angled up like this, a lot of times it's represented as a bounce in the chart. So all this is a good match to what this was. So we have completed this part of the structure. We are now working on this part. So how does this part over here match over here? So let's examine that. Okay, so I've zoomed in a little more. Now this gets a little tricky because it could be playing out in a smaller scale or a larger scale. So this is one possibility. So you have this part right here. It then moves up. The timing, again, is a little different this time around. So here is that move up. This time around, it didn't go as high as the fractal suggested. Here's that first bounce. After this right here, here's the second bounce, which we see in the fractal right here. Now, this time around, It dipped quite a bit, but it is my belief that it is really the same thing going on. This just went much lower than what the fractal suggested. We have this part right here that angles down. All that matches. So what is going on over here? So this is where the challenge right now lies. So it could be potentially this little part right here was this, and then this right here is this part right here. If that is the case, we would see something like this, and then it would just take off from here. The other possibility is that it is playing out larger. So this right here is essentially this move down right here is essentially this move down. So we'd see another bounce right here, and then we would move up and then do this. Now I am going to make an argument that this is the correct one. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to compare this to Bitcoin. Okay, so I have Bitcoin on the top here, and on the bottom I have XRP. Now I have this at the time of the great fakeout. So here is that great fakeout. Now we would be somewhere in this area right here. So if we examine the Bitcoin chart, we see that this fakeout right here really takes off when Bitcoin is roughly in this area right here. So it does this two-wave bounce right here. So in this wave or two-wave bounce, that's where XRP really takes off. It is my belief that we are currently in this area right here. So the two choices are this right here, which would be this right here, and there's this right here, which would be this right here. If we are here, the smaller little correction before this one, that would be roughly right here. So Bitcoin would be doing this consolidation or something similar to it. It hasn't quite made it to this part right here. So if we were to copy this fractal on Bitcoin and copy and paste it onto today's chart, it would look something like this. So I have a fib retracement drawn on here. Here is the 0.702. Here's the 0.618. I don't normally put fibs on, but I believe it is good just because I think Bitcoin is going to make it past the 702. That's the only reason why I'm putting this on here. But as you can see, it has been following this structure. Let's zoom in here a bit closer. So this right here is this right here. This is that two-wave bounce right here. Now, I don't know if this is going to be the height. It could be much higher. It could be lower. I don't know. It could take longer to play out. This is just me putting it on the chart just so you know where we are. This is not a representation of how high or how low or how large this will be. So if we compare this to XRP, we would potentially be working on, I believe, potentially this smaller correction right here. It would then move up as this moves up into here, and that larger correction, this one right here, would take place further up around here. That is if this continues to play out the same way it did back in 2020 when this took place. So folks, that is my argument for this structure playing out like this. Of course, I could be wrong. It could be like this. It also could be a much larger thing, but I believe this really does this, or this does match what is taking place over here. It's not a perfect match due to the timing, height, and depth. It never is going to be a perfect match, but I believe it does account for all the parts with the two waves down here, this move up right here, and with the waves that take place here. I believe that this does account for what is taking place on today's chart. So now I'm going to play the devil's advocate, just because I know some of you are making plans that you would like to sell in the great fakeout and maybe buy back when it's lower. So let's remove all this. So here we are zoomed back out looking at the macro structure. Now in my previous videos, I talked about this fractal 3 being a potential match to what is taking place over here. So I want to copy this fractal. Let's zoom in here just so you have a better understanding of what this looks like. So this here is the third fractal before going into the bull run. Now the essence of fractal 3 is this. It moves up to a peak, which is part A. It then declines or crashes. That crash bottom part is part B. It then moves back up, does a correction, and then it goes off into the bull run. So I want to copy this fractal right here and paste it onto today's chart. So here's that fractal, copy and pasted onto today's chart. And as you can see, it does match. Let's zoom in a little more. So while there is some differences, it does match the overall sequence. Now, this part right here is the weak point in the argument. This part is unaccounted for in this structure. It is my belief that this fractal 3 with this bounce right here, which is right here, this second wave right here, or bounce, which is this bounce right here, and then this part, which hasn't materialized yet, is a better match when compared against this fractal over here. But regardless of my opinion, this is something that you need to take into account. If it is going to follow this structure, it would move up pretty much right away or very soon, and it would not, I repeat, it would not go into the great fake out. Instead, it would go straight into the bull run. So I am showing you this because you need to be aware that there is this structure. It is a close match. It is a fractal 3 that is from another part of the chart. It is the fractal 3s that you need to compare one to another. You don't want to compare other structures. You don't want to compare fractal 2 to fractal 3. That's not a correct comparison, which brings up the macro structure. So XRP has a repetitive macro structure. This macro structure includes bull runs. We see one here. We see one here that took place on a much smaller scale. We see another one over here that wasn't quite as large as this one. And the difference in size is due to the timing, height, and depth being unique. After the bull run comes a decline. We see one here. We see another one over here. We see another one over here. These declines, even though they look different one from another, they actually structurally do the same thing every single time. It just plays out uniquely every single time. After the decline, it goes into this sideways range-bound time, which we see here, we see over here, and we see over here. I divide this sideways range-bound time into 3 separate fractals. Fractal 1 has 2 parts to it. Part A, where price moves up, it moves back down, and then part B, where it just kind of goes flat. Sometimes B angles down like this. We see that over here with part A, where it moves up in fractal 1, it moves back down, and then part B, where it went flat, just like it did over here. In fractal 2, it has 3 waves, wave A, wave B, and wave C. We see that take place over here, again, with wave A, wave B, and wave C. Wave C was much larger than this wave C, and that, once again, is due to the timing, height, and depth playing out unique every single time the structure repeats. In fractal 3, it essentially, like I said, goes up to a peak, part A, it then crashes, part B, and then it does that recovery with the correction right here before going into the bull run. This idea, this structure has played out over and over again on the XRP chart every single time it materializes. It looks unique, but the same ideas are there. If we were to go back further in XRP history, let's go over here. We see that same sequence of events taking place. We have a bull run, we have a decline, we have a sideways range-bound time. In that sideways range-bound time, we have 3 separate fractals with fractal 1, part A, where it moves up, moves back down, part B, where it goes flat, and this time it angled down a little bit, just like I was telling you. In fractal 2, we have the 3 waves, wave A, wave B, and wave C. In fractal 3, price moves up to a peak, it then declines, it then recovers, does a small little correction right here before it moves into the bull run. So this structure continues to play out over and over again. We see it over here with the bull run, the decline, and let's zoom in here, and the sideways range-bound time with fractal 1, price moves up, it then moves down in part A, and then part B, it goes flat. In fractal 2, we have the 3 waves, wave A, wave B. This was just a real quick, this whole thing took place really quick. And then wave C over here. In fractal 3, price moves up to a peak in part A, it then crashes. In part B, it then recovers and then does a small little correction over here before moving into the bull run. So you can see how this structure repeats over and over again. Every single time it looks different, but the main ideas are repeated. Okay, so here we are back at today's chart. So that is my thinking on the XRP chart. That is where I see XRP at the moment. Now, whether or not this structure is playing out on a smaller time frame or a larger time frame, we'll have to see. As of now, I believe XRP is playing out at this time frame. We are getting close to the breakout. Please take into consideration the other third fractal that I just showed you. Even though it is not as a good of a match as the one we have been following that includes the great fakeout, it is still something that should be in your decision making. Folks, for those of you who have been following me, this has been a journey getting here. We have been following the macro structure. While there have been curveballs here and there, sometimes it takes time to let things play out to see where we are, but the macro structure provides us a map. We can pinpoint where we are in that map. We know where we're going and what we could potentially expect in the future. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but if you did enjoy this video and would like to see more of this content, I recommend hitting that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you did enjoy this video, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.